Hello everyone and welcome to my art channel where we do painting tutorials. Today I have a couple of landscape studies I was going to do and I thought why not record them. So I start by taping down my paper and I run my kneaded eraser over the sketch, that way it picks up some of the lines and you don't get black lines over your paintings. I start by coloring the sky on the top one with some phthalo blue. I avoid the clouds because I want them to be bright white, and I just activate that blue with my brush using a scribble motion. I do clean the excess color that's left over on my brush on the bottom of the clouds to give a bit of a rainy cloud effect. And then I color everything else, the mountains, the field, with my earthy green. But I realized it would have been, and it is, much easier to first do the shadows. So I take my dark blue, the exact shade is helio blue reddish, and I just draw over the lines I had left as guides to know where to put my shadows. I do this angled piece on the left, almost like a V shape, to mimic some trees further up in the distance, and I also add some of those zigzag lines on my mountains, again to mimic the shape of trees. Then I proceed to color everything else with my green. I do a light layer. Because I'm using RS quality pencils, I do not need to build up layers or use much pressure because they are very pigmented on their own. I take my cadmium orange and I run it over all of the places I have used my dark blue. That way it neutralizes the blue and it gives me a very soft dark green / greenish brown color. I add some lines on the field we have on the foreground with my blue, so it looks like there is a grassy field and some wind rustling through it. Then I take my watercolor brush, make sure it's barely damp, we don't need it to be soaking wet, and again I find it much easier and simpler to first do my shadows on a specific subject and then do the big area we have in the green. So I do the dark blue first, which I have mixed with the orange. Just tapping with a swirl motion. I don't go left to right like normally to blend. I just need to activate this and make it more vibrant. We are not going for smoothness because these are nature sceneries, and some texture really helps give that imitation of details without spending hours on building up actual details. I do those random scribbles I have for trees on the top of my mountains and that sideways V shape, and then just cover the green grassy field. If drawing is not your thing, there is a traceable to both of these drawings over at my Patreon page, Sunshine Arts, and you can find the reference pictures I used down in the description box for free, along with all of the supplies I have used in this video. When I say reference, I just mean I took those shapes and I drew them on paper. I'm not going for a one-to-one full reference, and if I have to be 100% honest, the actual inspiration I had for the top one is Zelda / the new Pokemon Legend of Arceus, so if it looks familiar, now you know why. For the bottom one, I thought I'd use ultramarine blue for the sky. It gives a much more muted down and natural look to the landscapes instead of using phthalo blue, which is much more vibrant, illustrative, and overall a bit cartoony. Don't get me wrong, both blues are beautiful. It's really up to you what shade you like to use. So just like the previous one, I only color the sky and I leave the clouds blank. Then I go over with a slightly damp watercolor brush and I smooth it down. For my mountain, I'm going to be using some cad orange, so I outline it, and only the right side of my mountains on the bottom sketch is going to be covered in orange. The left side is going to be some rocky, snowy mountain slopes, so keep that in mind. I also leave some straight lines or diagonal lines, some empty gaps on the orange side for build-up snow, for some rocky areas. And then on the left side, I do a very, very light diagonal layer with my orange. The same goes for the mountains in the background. Their left sides are going to be very light and the right sides are going to be more saturated. Then I take my earthy green and I run it over the left orange sides to mute down the orange and give more of a rock-like color. I also use it beneath those empty gaps I left on the big orange area for some shadow, and then I go over with my ultramarine, the same color I used for the sky, on top of my green. I take some Venetian red and I do some lines on top of the orange. You can obviously use any darker red or darker orange or an earthy color. We just need a slightly darker shade from our orange. And I proceed to activate all of my areas. Again, I find it much easier to work from the shadows first and then do my main areas of focus. So first I do the slopes. Again, make sure you leave some white gaps to mimic build-up snow, because where we have shadow, the snow has not yet melted. That's the logic I'm following. And it really helps to use a diagonal motion because that's generally the direction of mountains. Then I repeat the same exact steps on my more saturated right area, and while my bottom painting dries, I take my helio blue reddish and I quickly add some more shadows on the top painting, mostly beneath those lines of trees and where the mountains gather. Then I take some walnut brown and again I add some more shadows right beneath the snowy blank areas. Just some diagonal lines, and I'm actually following the corners, the tiny zigzag crevices of the sketch, and that's where I place my shadows. I also add a couple of dots and swirly lines with black to deepen the shadows. And lastly, I do a very light layer of earthy green on top of my orange. I like to give a very special thank you to my patrons for the month of January. And thank you all for watching, and we'll see each other in the next video. Bye bye!